Imagine holding in your hand a small, silver-colored coin that at first glance looks like just another quarter, but as soon as you turn it over, it opens a doorway into a story stretching back hundreds of years into the very foundations of America. Itself, the 2019 San Antonio Missions Quarter is far more than 25 cents. It is a piece of history, art, culture, and memory carefully struck into metal by the United States Mint as part of the America the Beautiful Quarters program. This coin is not only a modern collectible, it is also a time capsule that tells the story of Spanish missions, native communities' cultural blending, survival, faith, agriculture, and the deep roots of San Antonio, Texas, a place that became central in the shaping of the American Southwest and the history of our nation. The San Antonio Missions National Historical Park was chosen to be honored on a quarter released in 2019, and for good reason. The missions themselves date back to the early 18th century, when Spanish colonists and missionaries established religious and community centers along the San Antonio River. These missions were not only churches, they were also walled communities that included housing, farmland, irrigation systems, workshops, and gathering places for the indigenous people who lived there. One of the most significant features of the missions was the acequia system, an advanced irrigation network that carried water from the San Antonio River into the fields, allowing agriculture to thrive in what would otherwise be a difficult environment. The missions were a blend of cultures, bringing together Spanish Catholic traditions with the existing culture of the Coahuiltecan and other native groups who lived in the region. When the United States Mint prepared the design for the San Antonio Missions Quarter, the engravers and artists wanted to capture the essence of this history in a single image, and they accomplished that through a cross-shaped design that divided the reverse side of the coin into 4 sections, each symbol telling a critical part of the mission story. The top left section features a depiction of wheat representing farming and agriculture, which were vital for sustaining the mission community and for teaching native inhabitants European styles of farming. The top right section contains the arches and a bell representing the mission church itself, which was the spiritual heart of the community. The bottom left displays a lion that echoes the Spanish colonial heritage, as the lion was a powerful symbol of Spanish culture and the Spanish crown, while the bottom right depicts the San Antonio River and its acequia system, the lifeblood that sustained both farming and settlement in the area. The obverse of the coin, of course, carries the familiar image of George Washington, designed by John Flanagan in 1932. But on this coin, Washington stands as a witness to a history that is much older and broader than his own lifetime, as the coin connects America's founding era to the earlier Spanish colonial presence and the blending of cultures that occurred in Texas in the 1700s. The San Antonio Missions Quarter was released to the public on August 26, 2019, with a launch ceremony held in San Antonio itself, attended by community leaders, officials from the United States Mint, and proud residents who recognized the honor of seeing their history struck into a coin that would circulate across the entire nation. This coin was the 49th release in the America the Beautiful Quarters series, a program that ran from 2010 to 2021 and honored 56 national parks, monuments, and historic sites across the country. The series was not only a massive artistic and educational effort, it was also a chance for collectors and the general public to learn about places they might never have visited before. The San Antonio Missions Quarter holds a special place in this series because it does not just celebrate a park or a natural landscape. It honors the human story of community building, survival, and cultural blending that defines Texas, and by extension, the United States itself. The missions of San Antonio were declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2015, which underscores their global importance. They are the only World Heritage Site in Texas and one of the few in the United States, and this designation highlights how these missions are not only significant to American history, but also to the history of humanity. As a whole, the quarter that honors them therefore carries a double weight. It represents both local heritage and global recognition. From a collecting standpoint, the San Antonio Missions Quarter exists in multiple mintages struck at the Philadelphia Denver and San Francisco mints, it was also produced in clad circulation strikes, silver-proof versions, and uncirculated sets. This means collectors can acquire the coin in a range of finishes from ordinary circulation wear to shining mirror-like. Proofs in pure silver. Some collectors pursue these coins in bulk, while others carefully preserve them in albums. The 2019 release also attracted attention because many collectors had already built enthusiasm for the America the Beautiful series. And the San Antonio Missions design was immediately recognized as one of the most distinctive and symbolic coins in the lineup. Beyond the physical coin, the symbolism of the San Antonio Missions quarter resonates deeply because it connects Americans. With questions about heritage identity and the blending of cultures, the missions were not simple monuments. They were living communities where native people adapted to new ways of life, introduced by Spanish missionaries, sometimes willingly, sometimes under pressure. The coin therefore asks us to reflect on the complexity of history, how cultures interact, how power is shared or imposed, and how memory is preserved. Today, the missions stand as quiet stone witnesses to those centuries of change. And the quarter is a small yet powerful way of keeping that memory alive in everyday life. Collectors and historians often note that the beauty of the America, the Beautiful program, lies in its ability to transform pocket change into storytelling. Devices. A single coin becomes an entry point for a schoolchild, a historian, a tourist, or even an ordinary spender who simply happens to glance at the back of their quarter and wonder what those arches or that lion might mean. In this way, the San Antonio Missions Quarter functions as a miniature classroom, spreading knowledge about Texas history, about Spanish colonization, about native adaptation, and about the enduring resilience of communities as you dive deeper into the history of the San Antonio Missions themselves. You begin to see how much meaning is packed into the imagery of the coin. The wheat on the quarter is not just wheat. It symbolizes the introduction of European agriculture to Texas, which altered the landscape and the diet of local people. The arches and bell are not just architectural elements. They represent faith conversion and the blending of spiritual practices. The lion is not just a heraldic animal. It is a reminder of Spanish authority, the crown, and empire that sought to extend itself into the New World. And the flowing water is not just a river. It is survival sustenance and the human capacity to engineer life, giving systems in harsh environments. Every detail of the San Antonio Missions Quarter was carefully considered, and when you trace the story behind it, you find that it covers more than 3 centuries of history. The coin connects the past of 18th century Spanish colonial Texas to the present day when visitors walk through. The preserved missions under the care of the National Park Service, it connects local identity to national pride and even to international heritage recognition, and it gives collectors a tangible object that carries this entire story in their hands. So, the next time you see the San Antonio Missions Quarter, think of it not as 25 cents, but as a window into a story of survival, faith, engineering, agriculture, empire, culture, and identity. It is one of the coins that most perfectly embodies the mission of the America the Beautiful series to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, to remind us that our history is not hidden in museums alone, but is circulating in our pockets every single day. Imagine holding a small piece of metal in your hand, a coin no bigger than your thumb. Yet inside that coin is a powerful story, a symbol of pride and a representation of the very first step in one of the most ambitious and successful coin programs. In United States history, the 1999 Georgia State Quarter is not just a quarter. It is a gateway into history, into culture, into identity, and into the beginning of a modern numismatic journey that captured the imagination of millions across the nation and the world. When the United States Mint unveiled the State Quarters program in 1999, it was more than just a new design for the 25-cent piece. It was a revolution. It was a deliberate attempt to connect the American people with their states, their heritage, and their pride through the coins that passed through their hands every single day. Georgia became the 4th state quarter to be released, following Delaware, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. and as such it had a unique role of representing the spirit of the Deep South at the dawn of the 21st century. The Georgia State Quarter was issued on July 19, 1999, and it immediately became an object of fascination. Its design stands as a proud declaration of the Peach State, featuring the famous peach in the center, surrounded by a banner reading "Wisdom, Justice, Moderation," which are the state's mottos and ideals, alongside a silhouette of the state map and an oak branch with leaves, a design that spoke directly to the strength, the agricultural importance, and the guiding principles of Georgia itself. The designer was T. James Farrell, an artist who captured not only the identity of Georgia, but also its significance in American history by blending symbols of heritage, nature, and ideals into one small coin. But to fully understand the Georgia Quarter, we must first dive deep into the origins of the State Quarters program itself, which began under the 50-State Commemorative Coin Program Act, signed into law in 1997. This act authorized the minting of quarters honoring each of the 50 states, with designs that would be issued over a 10-year period from 1999 to 2008. The idea was to release 5 quarters each year in the order that the states ratified the Constitution or were admitted to the Union, Georgia being the 4th state to ratify the Constitution on January 2nd of 1788, thus earned its spot as the 4th release. The coin itself is made from the standard clad composition of quarters, copper-nickel bonded to a pure copper core. But what makes it valuable to collectors is not the metal content, but the artistry, the symbolism, and in some cases the minting errors and variations that occurred during production. The Georgia Quarter was struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, and also included proof versions, struck at San Francisco in both clad and silver editions. The mintage numbers were enormous, with hundreds of millions produced, but despite such high numbers, collectors rushed to acquire them either from circulation or through mint-issued sets, because these coins represented something bigger than money. They represented identity and pride. The peach in the design is central, and it is not just a random fruit. It is the very symbol of Georgia, known as the Peach State, because of its long agricultural association with peaches, which are considered among the finest grown anywhere. The inclusion of the peach gave the coin instant recognition, while the oak branch symbolized strength and endurance, qualities deeply tied to the state's history. The banner of wisdom, justice, moderation referenced the guiding principles found in Georgia's state seal, and together these symbols transformed a small coin into a miniature canvas of state history and values. When analyzing the impact of the Georgia Quarter, we see that it played a vital role in igniting the national coin-collecting frenzy that the State Quarters program became. Millions of Americans, young and old, suddenly took an interest in their change. They examined their coins, carefully searching for the designs from their home state or neighboring states. This sparked a new generation of collectors and made the United States Mint more connected to the public than at any time in decades. The Georgia Quarter circulated widely, but also was hoarded in large numbers by collectors and families alike. For collectors today, the Georgia Quarter offers much to study and appreciate. While most are common, some rare varieties and minting errors add significant value. Examples include off-center strikes, double-die errors, and coins struck on experimental planchets during the transitional period of the late 1990s. Furthermore, certain proof editions in high grades, especially those certified by top grading agencies such as PCGS or NGC, can bring substantial premiums at auction beyond the financial aspect. Though the Georgia Quarter is a window into the history of the state itself, Georgia's long history, from its colonial foundation to its role as the fourth state to join the Union, from its agricultural economy to its pivotal role in the civil rights movement, is symbolized in the choice of imagery on the coin. Each detail was carefully chosen to represent centuries of history: the oak branch as a nod to the natural beauty and resilience of the state, the peach as the agricultural lifeblood, and the motto as the compass guiding the people of Georgia in their governance and ideals. A broader sense, the Georgia State Quarter is also important because it marked the success of the State Quarters program, which became the most popular numismatic initiative in American history by the end of the program in 2008. Nearly half of all Americans had collected at least some of the state quarters, and the mint generated billions in seigniorage and profits for the U.S. Treasury. But Georgia's coin, being part of the first year, was especially memorable. It was among the coins that introduced the concept to the public and set the standard for the years to follow. Collectors today who hold a Georgia quarter, whether in circulated form or as a pristine proof, are not just holding a coin, they are holding a piece of a larger story. A story about how coins can connect us to our heritage, to our identity, and to our shared history. As Americans, the coin continues to appear in circulation, reminding us that even ordinary change can carry extraordinary meaning. Imagine holding in your hand not just a coin, but a gateway into history, a small silver-toned piece of metal that tells the story of the very beginnings of English America, a coin that captures the courage, the ambition, and the survival of the first permanent English settlement in the New World. When you look at the Virginia 2000 quarter, you are not just looking at change in your pocket, you are looking at a monument in miniature, a memorial struck by the United States Mint to honor one of the most defining chapters in the story of America. The Virginia State Quarter, released in the year 2000, stands as part of the ambitious United States Mint 50 State Quarters program, a program that reshaped the way Americans looked at coinage, transforming ordinary quarters into symbols of national and regional pride. Before the Virginia Quarter came into circulation, Americans had already seen the release of several other state designs. But this one carried a special weight because Virginia is known as the birthplace of English America, the site of Jamestown, founded in 1607, the very colony that would set the course for centuries of history ahead. The design of the Virginia Quarter is one of the most striking in the series, showing the three ships, Susan Constant, Godspeed, and Discovery, sailing bravely across the Atlantic waters. It is not simply a design, but a carefully chosen image that symbolizes the courage of the first colonists who risked their lives to travel to an unknown world. Those three ships carried 104 men and boys from England to the shores of Virginia in 1607, and that journey marked the beginning of what would become the United States. The reverse of the coin captures them mid-voyage, sailing into history with detail that honors their size and structure, the sails full of wind, the masts upright, the ocean waves engraved with precision surrounding the ships. The words Jamestown 1607-2007 are etched to remind us of the settlement that changed the destiny of North America, along with the bold inscription Virginia 1788, the year the state entered the Union. When the quarter was unveiled, the Mint worked closely with the Commonwealth of Virginia to ensure authenticity and symbolism. The Jamestown 400th anniversary was only a few years away, and the quarter played a role in building awareness of the upcoming commemoration. Virginia's design beat out other proposed concepts, including images of Thomas Jefferson Monticello and colonial settlers. But the three ships won out because they were iconic and they carried the universal symbolism of exploration and beginnings. Collectors and historians alike were fascinated with the Virginia Quarter because it was not only beautifully designed, but also packed with meaning. It represented a bridge between the old world and the new world, between England and America, and between survival and the foundation of a new nation. This was a coin that did not just sit quietly in a pocket. It spoke to every person who held it, reminding them of origins, sacrifice, and ambition. To truly understand the Virginia Quarter, we must go deeper into the history it commemorates. In the early 17th century, England was searching for expansion wealth and influence across the globe. Spain had already established powerful colonies in the Americas, and England was eager to compete. Queen Elizabeth had passed, leaving the throne to King James I, and under his charter, the Virginia Company of London was granted permission to establish a settlement across the Atlantic in late 1606. 3 ships commanded by Captain Christopher Newport set sail, carrying hopes, dreams, and fears. The voyage was dangerous. Storms threatened supplies. Food ran low. Disease spread, yet the promise of land opportunity and new beginnings kept the colonists going after a treacherous 4-month journey. The ships reached the shores of present-day Virginia in April of 1607, choosing a marshy peninsula along the James River. To establish a fort they named the settlement Jamestown in honor of their king. Life in Jamestown was brutal. Disease, starvation, and conflicts with the native Powhatan Confederacy took a heavy toll. Within the first year, most of the settlers perished. Yet against the odds, Jamestown endured and laid the foundations of English America. It became the model for later colonies and introduced systems like representative government with the House of Burgesses, in 1619 agriculture through tobacco farming, and eventually a society that expanded into the 13 colonies. Virginia's story was not one of ease, but one of survival, perseverance, and determination. And that is exactly what the Virginia Quarter celebrates. The coin itself minted in both. Philadelphia and Denver, with additional proofs from San Francisco, became one of the most collected quarters in the entire series. Billions of Virginia quarters entered circulation, but collectors prized them, especially in pristine uncirculated or proof condition. The release year 2000 was a turning point because the quarter program was drawing in not just numismatists, but everyday citizens, children, teachers, and families who suddenly found themselves searching pocket change and coin rolls for pieces of history. The artistry of the coin deserves recognition as well. The designer and engravers of the mint paid close attention to historical accuracy, studying ship blueprints and consulting with historians to ensure the proportions. And details of the Susan Constant Godspeed and Discovery were as faithful as possible. The end result is a miniature masterpiece, a work of art no larger than a thumb, yet powerful enough to capture the founding of a nation as we trace the journey. Of this quarter, we see not just the history of Jamestown, but the story of Virginia itself. The Old Dominion was the first colony to take root in North America. It became a powerhouse of agriculture, politics, and culture. It gave America 4 of its first 5 presidents. Washington, Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe. Its soil saw the Revolution. Its land bore the Civil War, and its spirit shaped the country in countless ways. The quarter acts as a reminder of Virginia's role in all of this. Every detail etched into the metal tells us that this state is where it all began. For collectors, the Virginia 2000 quarter remains a treasure. Some versions struck with errors, such as double-die varieties or off-center strikes, can fetch significant premiums, while proof editions in silver or clad are sought after by numismatists. The state quarter program brought millions of new collectors into the hobby, and Virginia's design remains one of the most talked about in coin shows and auctions, even 2 decades later. In the larger picture, the Virginia quarter also symbolizes how coinage can serve as education. Each time someone held it, they were invited to remember the courage of 1607, the ships crossing the ocean, the struggles of the settlers, and the legacy that followed. Coins are often overlooked. Yet they are small canvases carrying the stories of a nation, and the Virginia quarter may be one of the finest examples in the modern era. And so when you think about the Virginia State Quarter of 2000, you are not thinking about ordinary currency. You are thinking about a bridge in time, a metal memorial that connects you to the dawn of English America. It is a coin that teaches. It is a coin that honors. And it is a coin that ensures the voyage of those 3 ships is never forgotten. Imagine holding in your hand a simple coin, a small round piece of metal, but behind it lies centuries of history, tradition, and pride. The year is 2001, and America is in the middle of one of its most ambitious coinage programs, the United States. Mint State Quarters program and the 26th quarter to be released under this monumental series honored the Bluegrass State, Kentucky, a state with a legacy of frontier spirit horse racing, bourbon distilling, and historic landmarks, Kentucky. joined the Union in 1792, becoming the 15th state, and its addition to the series brought forward an image that captured the heart of its people and the essence of its identity. The design featured Federal Hill, better known as My Old Kentucky, home framed by a racehorse and a white plank fence, two powerful symbols tied deeply to the land and its culture. The Kentucky State Quarter was released into circulation on October 15, 2001, and it immediately became a favorite among collectors and the general public alike. The coin was not just a representation of a state, but a storybook in metal. Federal Hill, located in Bardstown, Kentucky, was immortalized in the state song My Old Kentucky Home, which remains inseparable from the identity of the state. This plantation-style mansion became symbolic of Kentucky life and its connections to history and music. The state song itself, penned by Stephen Foster in the mid-19th century, echoed themes of life, heritage, and struggle, and, while the song has undergone historical reinterpretation, its emotional tie to Kentuckians has remained steady. The depiction of Federal Hill on the quarter thus became more than a building. It became an emblem of Kentucky heritage. Alongside the mansion, the coin presents a thoroughbred horse behind the famous white fence that instantly calls to mind the state's deep relationship with horse breeding and racing. Kentucky is recognized worldwide for the Kentucky Derby and its central role. In the history of thoroughbred racing, horses have been raised, trained, and celebrated in the bluegrass region for centuries, and this tradition has shaped Kentucky's cultural and economic life. The image of the horse, therefore, was not an ornament, but a declaration of Kentucky's pride in its equine legacy. The creation of the Kentucky Quarter followed the process established by the United States Mint for all the state quarters in which state officials, citizens, and design experts contributed. Ideas to best represent each state's character. The governor at the time, Paul E. Patton, oversaw the state's input into the design. The final choice represented a perfect balance of architectural history and equestrian culture. The mansion, the fence, and the horse, all set within a single image that symbolized the dual spirit of heritage and modern identity for Kentucky. When examining the technical aspects of the coin, one finds that, like all state quarters, it was struck at the Philadelphia and Denver mints with proof versions created at the San Francisco Mint. Each coin carries the inscriptions Kentucky, 1792, My Old Kentucky Home, and E Pluribus Unum, the year of release, 2001, marked Kentucky's moment of entry into the series. The quarters had a standard composition of 91. 67% copper, and 8.33% nickel, with a total weight of 5.67 grams and a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, making it identical in form to all quarters, yet unique in symbolism. The proof versions were also struck in both clad and silver formats, offering collectors a range of options for their sets. The release of the Kentucky Quarter was met with widespread enthusiasm by the people of the state and beyond. Schools, historical societies, and collectors used the coin as an opportunity to revisit Kentucky history. The Federal Hill Mansion became a site of increased tourism, as many wished to see, with their own eyes, the building immortalized in their pocket change. The coin also reignited discussions about the state song and the legacy of Stephen Foster, whose work tied Kentucky into the larger fabric of American music. What makes the Kentucky Quarter particularly fascinating is its ability to connect multiple themes in one design, while some state quarters focused on single symbols. The Kentucky Quarter wove together architecture, music history, and equestrian heritage, creating layers of meaning that collectors and historians could analyze for decades. Kentucky is not only a state of horses and bourbon, but also of frontiersmen, pioneers, and cultural contributions stretching back to its entry into the Union in 1792. Thus, the quarter serves as a condensed symbol of over 2 centuries of growth, transformation, and tradition. In the broader context of the state quarters program, the Kentucky coin also reflected how each design served as a miniature ambassador for its state, and how everyday Americans became more engaged with their currency. The program was credited with creating millions of new collectors and sparking renewed interest in numismatics. Each new release was awaited with anticipation, and the Kentucky Quarter was no exception. Its unique imagery and historic resonance gave it a special place in the series. For collectors, the Kentucky 2001 Quarter offers not only sentimental, but also practical value. While it is not considered rare in circulation due to the high mintage numbers with more than 353 million struck at Philadelphia and more than 370 million struck at Denver, pristine uncirculated examples, and proof versions hold higher value, especially in certified conditions graded by organizations such as PCGS and NGC. The silver proof versions remain highly sought after, particularly in deep cameo finishes, and continue to circulate widely in the collector market. To truly understand the Kentucky State Quarter, one must explore the deeper layers of symbolism. Federal Hill itself dates back to the early 19th century, built by Judge John Rowan, whose family occupied the mansion for generations. The house became tied to Stephen Foster through family connections, and later through his composition, My Old Kentucky Home, which transformed the estate into a cultural landmark by placing this building on the state quarter, the Mint. Recognized not only the architecture but also the cultural story behind it, linking music, literature, and memory in a way that no other state quarter had done quite so vividly. The horse element on the design also deserves further exploration. Kentucky's bluegrass region is home to some of the most fertile soil in the United States, rich in limestone, which contributes directly to the strength of horse bones, making it an unparalleled environment for breeding thoroughbreds. The Kentucky Derby first, held in 1875 at Churchill Downs, became the pinnacle of horse racing in America, and today remains the longest-running sporting event in the nation. The coin design celebrates this unparalleled equestrian tradition and places Kentucky firmly in the spotlight as the horse capital of the world. The Kentucky Quarter, then, is far more than a piece of coinage. It is a small yet powerful reminder of a state's role in shaping the American story. It captures the past through Federal Hill, the cultural heartbeat through the state song, and the enduring spirit through the thoroughbred horse, standing proudly behind its fence. In doing so, it offers both residents of Kentucky and Americans at large a reminder of the blend of history and identity that coins uniquely preserve. Imagine holding in your hand a simple quarter that is not just a piece of metal used for everyday transactions, but a gateway into a story that connects the spirit of the American frontier, the proud history of the Great Plains, and the culture of a state that embodies freedom, resilience, and the values of the heartland. This is not just a coin, it is the 2005 Kansas State Quarter, and behind its design lies a journey through history, heritage, and meaning that reaches far deeper than most collectors and casual observers might ever realize. The Kansas State Quarter, released in 2005 as part of the United States Mint's ambitious 50 State Quarters program, became an instant favorite among collectors, historians, and residents of the state. Because it encapsulated the identity of Kansas in a simple yet powerful design, the coin features a majestic American bison grazing upon the open prairie with sunflowers nearby, a combination that reflects both the natural beauty and the iconic symbols of Kansas. The decision to highlight the bison on the coin was not accidental, nor was it merely a decorative choice. The American bison has long been tied to the history of Kansas and the Great Plains, symbolizing strength and endurance, and the deep relationship between the land and those who depended on it. The American bison once roamed the plains in numbers that stagger the imagination. Historians estimate that tens of millions once lived across North America, but by the 19th century, their numbers dwindled dramatically due to overhunting, habitat loss, and the westward expansion of settlers. Kansas played a pivotal role in this story, being both a land where bison thrived and later a region where conservation efforts began to take shape. Placing the bison on the Kansas Quarter was a recognition of that long and complex history, a reminder of both loss and renewal. Beside the bison rests the sunflower, which is the official state flower of Kansas, and has been a defining emblem of the region for generations. The sunflower was chosen to represent the vibrancy and resilience of Kansas, thriving under the strong sun across wide expanses of farmland and open skies. It is a plant that grows tall and strong much. Like the people of Kansas themselves, the pairing of the bison and sunflower on the quarter was deliberate. It merges the strength of the natural world with the enduring beauty of the state, creating a balanced image that captures the essence of Kansas life, culture, and environment. The Kansas Quarter also carries the familiar inscriptions of the 50 State Quarters program, including the year of statehood 1861, a critical moment in the history of the United States because Kansas entered the Union as a free state during a time of national division leading up to the Civil War. Kansas had earned the nickname Bleeding Kansas due to the violent conflicts between pro-slavery and anti-slavery settlers in the territory, the decision of Kansas. To enter as a free state shaped the course of American history and set the tone for the battles that would follow. Thus, the year 1861 inscribed on the quarter is not just a date, but a powerful reminder of the struggle for freedom and equality. 50 State Quarters program itself began in 1999 and continued through 2008, issuing unique quarters for each state in the order they joined. The Union, Kansas was the 34th state admitted, and its quarter was released in August of 2005. The program revolutionized modern coin collecting, drawing millions of Americans into the hobby. It became one of the most successful initiatives in U.S. mint history, and the Kansas Quarter remains one of the standout issues within the program because of its clean, symbolic design and historical depth. From a numismatic perspective, the Kansas Quarter is also fascinating for collectors, not only for its design but for the minting varieties and errors that arose during production. Some quarters struck at the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint display unique features or misprints that have made them highly sought after. One of the most famous errors associated with the Kansas Quarter is the so-called "In God We Rust" variety, which occurred due to a grease-filled die that obscured the T in trust on the motto, "In God We Trust." This striking error quickly became a favorite among collectors and significantly increased interest in the Kansas Quarter as people across the nation began checking their change in hopes of finding one beyond errors. The Kansas Quarter invites collectors to think about the broader themes of coinage and symbolism. Why do we put certain images on coins? What do they tell us about our national identity, and how do they connect everyday people to history? In the case of Kansas, the imagery is both simple and profound. The bison and the sunflower are not abstract or distant symbols. They are everyday icons of life in Kansas, yet together they tell a story of survival, renewal, beauty, and heritage. To understand the Kansas Quarter fully, one must also place it in the context of Kansas history. Stretching back centuries before statehood, the land was originally home to Native American tribes, including the Kansa, Osage, Pawnee, and Wichita, who relied on the land's resources and had their own deep relationships with the bison. The arrival of European settlers dramatically altered this balance, and Kansas became a battleground of cultures, economies, and ideologies. During the 19th century, the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 allowed settlers to decide whether slavery would be allowed in the territory. This led to violent clashes between abolitionists and pro-slavery factions, culminating in the era known as Bleeding Kansas. The legacy of that struggle became central to the state's identity and is quietly evoked whenever the date 1861 appears on the quarter. The agricultural story of Kansas also connects directly to the quarter's symbolism. The state is one of the leading producers of wheat, corn, and livestock in the United States. The sunflower itself has agricultural significance, not only as a symbol, but as a crop historically linked to Kansas farming communities. The pairing of agriculture with the natural symbol of the bison underscores the balance between human settlement and the natural world that defines Kansas even today. When the Kansas Quarter entered circulation in 2005, millions of people began to see and handle A small piece of Kansas identity, even those who never traveled to the state, could hold a coin that spoke of the wide prairies, the resilience of sunflowers, and the power of the bison. The design won praise for its simplicity and clarity because, unlike some other state quarters that contained cluttered or complex imagery, the Kansas quarter conveyed its message directly and boldly. One strong animal, one resilient plant, two powerful symbols. Collectors today continue to value the Kansas quarter, both for its design and its place in the broader 50-state quarters program. Some see it as one of the most aesthetically pleasing designs. Others cherish it for the historical significance of Kansas and the connection to the Civil War era still. Others are drawn to the famous era coins that add layers of intrigue and value to the issue. Whatever the reason, the Kansas quarter has carved out a firm place in American numismatic history. As we reflect on the Kansas quarter, it becomes clear that coins are more than metal. They are storytellers and ambassadors of culture. The Kansas quarter tells us about nature, resilience, history, and values. It bridges the past with the present, from the days when bison herds thundered across the plains, to the modern moment when millions of Americans see a sunflower each summer as they drive across the Midwest, or glimpse one stamped into the pocket change of daily life. The Kansas quarter is both art and history, both commerce and culture, both memory and symbol, and it continues to resonate with collectors and citizens alike. Imagine holding in your hand a small silver-colored coin that tells a story not just of money, but of heritage, of pride, of culture, and of the land itself. The Idaho State Quarter, released in 2007, is far more than just 25 cents. It is a window into the soul of a state that is often called the gem. State, a place of natural beauty, rich history, and strong identity. This coin, minted as part of the United States Mint's ambitious 50-state quarters program, became a symbol of Idaho's story, told through carefully chosen design elements that still captivate collectors, historians, and everyday people alike. The program itself, which began in 1999, was one of the most successful coin programs in American history, designed to release 5 new state quarters each year. In the order in which states entered the Union, Idaho entered in 1890 as the 43rd state, and so its coin was scheduled for 2007, nearly 2 decades after the program was first envisioned. The design of the Idaho quarter is striking, immediately recognizable, and deeply symbolic. The most dominant feature is the peregrine falcon, depicted with its wings spread wide. The falcon is shown in exquisite detail, looking fierce and determined, a choice that reflects Idaho's connection with wildlife preservation and the natural world. The peregrine falcon had once been driven to near extinction in the United States during the mid-20th century due to the widespread use of pesticides, but through conservation efforts, the species rebounded and became a national symbol of resilience and survival. Idaho played a special role in these recovery efforts, and thus the choice of the falcon was more than fitting. It was a tribute to both the bird's triumph and the state's commitment to protecting its wilderness. Beside the falcon is the outline of the state of Idaho itself, a simple yet powerful visual anchor that grounds the design and makes it unmistakably tied to the state the outline reinforces. The sense of geography, identity, and pride showing Idaho as a unique piece of the American puzzle, and just above the falcon is the state motto Esto Perpetua, which translates to "Let it be perpetual" or "May it last forever," a phrase that captures the enduring spirit of the state, its people, and its natural beauty. This motto has deep roots in Idaho history, adopted in 1890 when Idaho became a state. It reflects the desire for lasting prosperity, justice, and preservation of the land. To fully understand the coin, one must step back and look at Idaho itself, a state with a fascinating past stretching from indigenous cultures to the fur trade to mining, agriculture, and modern development. Long before European settlement, Native American tribes such as the Nez Perce, the Shoshone Bannock, and the Coeur d'Alene lived in these lands, developing deep spiritual and practical connections to the river's mountains and plains. Their legacy is inseparable from Idaho's history, and their presence is echoed in the landscapes that are now symbolized in the falcon soaring above the state outline. The arrival of fur trappers and explorers in the early 19th century opened the region to trade and settlement, eventually followed by waves of miners and pioneers. The discovery of gold and silver brought attention and migration to Idaho's rugged lands during the mid-1800s. The very idea of Idaho as a state was forged in the fires of opportunity, hardship, and frontier resilience. By the time Idaho entered the Union in 1890, its identity as the gem state was already forming due to its vast natural resources, not only precious metals, but also fertile lands, forests, and eventually hydroelectric power. The gem state nickname is not just about gemstones, though Idaho does produce rare star garnets. It also refers more broadly to Idaho being a gem among states for its resources and beauty. The quarter's falcon, therefore, becomes a modern emblem layered upon this long history of connection to land and survival against the odds. The process of designing the Idaho Quarter involved both state and federal input. Citizens of Idaho submitted ideas, and the state government narrowed them down to a set of finalists. The United States Mint then worked with Idaho officials to create the final version that we see today. The falcon design was chosen over other ideas that might have included landscapes, symbols of mining or agriculture, or references to Native American heritage. The choice of the falcon was bold and contemporary, and it gave the Idaho coin a modern and timeless appeal. When it was released in 2007, it immediately stood out from the rest of the state quarters for its dramatic imagery, collectors today value the Idaho Quarter, both for its symbolic meaning and for its place within the 50 State Quarters program. Millions were minted in Philadelphia and Denver, and some in San Francisco for proof sets, while circulation quarters are common and worth face value. High-grade uncirculated or proof examples, especially with errors or rare mint marks, can carry premiums in the numismatic market. The coin, therefore, straddles the line between everyday object and collectible treasure, embodying the spirit of the program, which brought millions of new people into the hobby of coin collecting. But the Idaho Quarter is more than just design and metal. It is a reflection of the larger story of the 50 State Quarters program, a project that reinvigorated interest in American coinage at the turn of the millennium from 1999 to 2008. Each new release became a miniature cultural event. People across the nation eagerly waited for new quarters to appear. In change, children collected them in maps and folders. Grandparents gave them as gifts. Teachers used them in classrooms to teach geography, history, and civics. By the time Idaho's coin was released, the program had already become a phenomenon, and Idaho's bold design added another layer of energy to the national conversation. Spending time with this coin is like unfolding a narrative of resilience, of identity, and of the enduring human connection to nature. The falcon itself invites us to consider the power of flight, freedom, and vision. The motto Esto Perpetua challenges us to think about permanence, about what it means to preserve a way of life and natural beauty in a world that is constantly changing. And the outline of Idaho reminds us that behind every coin there is a land and a people whose story is worth remembering. As we continue to explore the meaning of the Idaho Quarter, we can also connect it to broader themes in American history. The revival of the peregrine falcon parallels the revival of interest in conservation. Across the United States during the late 20th century, the environmental movement gained momentum, leading to legislation such as the Endangered Species Act of 1973. Idaho's Quarter, therefore, is not just about one bird, it is about a national story of ecological awareness and responsibility. When we think about the long arc of Idaho's history, from the first peoples who walked its valleys to the pioneers who braved its mountains, from miners searching for fortune to modern conservationists striving to protect its treasures, we can see that the Idaho Quarter is not simply a coin, but a canvas of identity. It bridges the past with the present and invites us to carry its message into the future. In this way, the Idaho Quarter, like the motto etched upon it, may itself be perpetual living on in the hands of collectors, in the pockets of citizens, and in the history of the United States Mint.